Welcome to our Research Like a Pro with DNA question and answer series. And today we're going to talk about how to use the chromosome browser at 23andMe to triangulate a segment. So I asked AI to do a little diagram or a graph or an image for me for segment triangulation. And after a few tries, Gemini came up with this one. And so this is going to be our case study. We're going to talk about how I found a triangulated segment between myself and a cousin who we're going to call Ed and another cousin who we're going to call KS. So what does segment triangulation mean? Well, simply that we find segments that overlap on a specific um, area on a chromosome. And then, of course, what we're trying to do is figure out the common ancestral couple or a common ancestor who gave us that segment. So I have a little question mark here because it was easy for me to see how much DNA I shared with both these two matches, but how could I figure out on 23andMe how much they shared with each other? And so we are going to take a look at that and I'll show you how that can be done. So when you go into 23andMe, you're going to look for DNA relatives, and up at the top, it'll have different choices for you to click on. And so you'll click on DNA relatives, and then you will get your match list. And then you can click on any of your matches to look at your chromosome data. So I like to use my first cousin, KS, because I know exactly how we are related. It's through my mother's side. Here's my mother, and I know exactly, where this line is coming from. So when I click into KS, I see that 23 has also decided that this is my first cousin on my mother's side and that we share a set of grandparents. And you can see all the different pieces of DNA that we share, including on the X chromosome, which we both inherited from our mothers and goes, up here to my Florence Matilda, who's our shared grandmother. So here are our shared grandparents, my first cousin, and I have a lot of different segments here that we share. Now, I also want to see what else I can find with comparing with Kathy, because I would like to see if I have some segments that track back to one of these other ancestral couples. Could I get back to the Kelseys or the Creers or even further on? So I want to see who else shares DNA with Kathy and myself. So when I look to see who I have relatives in common with my cousin KS, then I see that there are quite a few. There's a long list, and all these at the very top are close matches to me. I have a half niece, another first cousin who happens to be the sister of KS, and then all sorts of other cousins. But finally, here is a second cousin, and we could be sharing that next level of grandparents. And so that would give me more information about any segments that we share. So we'll call this match Ed. And over here on the right, you can see I have something called DNA overlap. So this is a feature that if you are subscribing to 23andMe's Premium, you will see this. And this is so valuable because this is how you can see if you have got triangulation going on with any of your DNA matches. And because we have this chromosome browser now in 23andMe, this is really something that could be worth your pennies in spending. So when I click compare next to Ed, and I am hoping I will see some good overlap, some segments that might be triangulated segments. First of all, I see the match page where I get to see the different segments that I share with Ed, and not as many as with KS because it's a second cousin, and we're not going to share as much DNA, but you can see there's still plenty of places where we could perhaps have some overlap. So I also know who this cousin is, and I figured out that he comes through my first great grandparents, Charles Creer and Mary Peterson. Here's a picture of them. They are the parents of Florence Matilda. So if there are any matches or any segments between myself and cousin KS and cousin Ed, then that would mean it's coming back on the Creer line because he is a Creer descendant. Now, If I had any intermarriage between the Kelties and Creers, then it would not be so simple. But there is no intermarriage as far as we can tell. We've never seen anything in these lines, which is helpful. Now, the 23andMe chromosome browser, when I use this tool to compare, I'm able to see how I compare to KS. In purple are all of our segments, a lot of those for our first cousin relationship, and then how I compare to Ed, all the different orange segments. And here you can see that this is very probably a triangulated segment. So I want to explore that a little bit and see exactly what's going on. Looking down here, you can see here's another one that's a possible. This may be a little bit smaller segment, and we always want to try to have the larger segments if possible. Here's another one right below it that's another possible, but looks like it maybe is a little bit smaller. So you can't really rely on these chromosome maps to get the size of these segments. Instead, what we do is scroll down on this page so we get the actual start and end positions. And then this is where we get the data. And we can see that this segment that I'm taking a look at on number 2 here at the end, it actually is a pretty decent size segment. It's 23 centimorgans. Here's the start and end position, the number of SNPs. It's got a lot of SNPs in it, so it's a pretty good segment. If I continue scrolling down, I also get the chromosome data for Ed on that very same segment. And so we can see that that also is a pretty good segment size there. And then the real tool that I need to use is one that's going to help me do the triangulation because I know how much I share between myself and Ed and between myself and KS, but what about between these two? That's where I need to see if they truly do overlap on that segment. So how do we do that? This is where it gets just a little bit tricky. So, first, you have to select somebody who's going to be your main person, and this can be yourself or anyone else whose profile you have within your account. So, for instance, I have my mother's profile within my account, and I can switch back and forth between her account or my own. You can also select anyone who you have a connection with. So, if you have sent them that little message, say, please connect, and they've agreed, and then you can use them in this home spot and see how much DNA they share or specific segment data with them and any of the other relatives. So I put KS in this main spot, and then I put myself and Ed in the compare spot. And then I was able to see that KS and Ed shared indeed on that same segment there. And you can see where we share, this is just a portion of it in orange, and she doesn't share as much, we're first cousins. He's a second cousin to us, but I do see this same segment highlighted. And then if I scroll down, I can see all the data for that, the start and end position and the genetic distance of 14 centimorgans, which is decent. And now I have all the data I need to put that into my favorite tool for triangulation, and that is the DNA painter map. So here is my map. I am getting close to 50%. I'm minus 55%, which means I have some work to do to fill in a lot of these gaps. And I want to paint a brand new match. I have identified a lot of different ancestral couples and where people match up. And so those are all over here on the side. And the more that you can identify, the better it's going to be when you have an unknown match because you'll be able to overlay a segment and see if it matches up with anything that you know. So, one thing to note on DNA Painter, you have got two copies of the chromosome for one, two, three, etc. And you have to decide if a match is paternal or maternal. And if you mess up on that, it's going to mess up your map. So make sure you know maternal or paternal at least before you paint a match. So the first thing you do when you say paint a new match is it opens up a box and you have to go and grab your data. So on 23andMe, it's really easy. I already showed you that data, and so I just copied all of that and then I pasted it right into DNA Painter directly into the box. And you can see here that you can paste in your data from GEDmatch, Family Tree DNA, 23andMe, and MyHeritage, and that you can add all those rows in. So this is very, very easy to do. And it comes up with this exclude segments under 7 centimorgans because remember, we want to make sure we're using the larger segments to make sure they're real and not perhaps false positives. Now we could increase this and change that number. I could change it to 15 so I could have just higher numbers painted. You're kind of in charge of that, and you can read about it if you need to. Now, before you paint, you can preview these, make sure they're coming in correctly. And when you feel good about everything, then you can save it. So before you save it, you do a few other things and you have to answer some questions. You can say, I do know how I'm connected, or I don't know how I'm connected. And so I do know, so I was able to, put the mark right here so that I know. And then I also was able to say this is a maternal match, and so I could get that onto the right chromosome. And I also could select the couple that this match comes through. So I had already decided or determined that it comes through my great grandparents, Charles and Mary Peterson Creer. And then this is just an important concept, very key. If a match overlaps a group, this does not necessarily mean it belongs in that group, since the site does not know if your match is on the maternal or paternal chromosome. To establish this, you'll need to compare your match to other known matches. So I knew these cousins, I knew where they went. And we have our different tools on the different company websites to phase our DNA with maternal or paternal. So we definitely want to try to do that as best we can because we're going to have to determine that when we paint. Now we can also add some details, and I would highly recommend adding some good details so that when you go back and look at your chromosome map, you can remember this match. So here I put in for this match that was a second cousin, Ed, his father, going back to Sarah Jane Creer, and then to our common ancestral couple there, Charles and Mary Peterson. So one other thing we can do is adjust the certainty level. I am certain that this is a valid segment. I'm certain about these people, so I have it all the way over. If we're a little bit uncertain, we could toggle that further down. And then again, if you know how you're connected, you can label these segments with the name of the ancestor you got them from. And so I have done that. I link these segments to an ancestor I've added before, and this little toggle arrow here, you can see your whole list of ancestors. And if you want to add a new set of ancestors, or you can add something like genetic network number 1 or unknown match, but in this line. So you can always add whatever you want for the name of the ancestor. If you don't have a real name, you can add your suspected or estimated name. And then you would save your match, and then you can have the option to actually look at what your new match looks like. And so for my new match for Ed, you can see all the different segments that are now painted. And a lot of these overlapped with other people on that same line, but some of them painted a little bit something new in my chromosome map. Now in DNA Painter, you can see all your different chromosomes. You can highlight just one. Here I'm just showing you the chromosome 2. Here's the paternal part of it, and here is the maternal part. And I've been able to tell that just because I know who these cousins are. And you can see that triangulated segment came in, and there it is. It also matches up with a couple other cousins. So here in purple is cousin KS, and here's cousin Ed. And then over here, I have another first cousin on this line. And then I have a second cousin once removed. So this is an interesting match right here, this cousin. And when I researched him, I found that he actually comes up another level, and he is through the William Creer and Sarah Jane Miller family. So now I know that this segment is coming through the Creers. It could have been coming through Mary Margaret Peterson, in which case then I maybe would have matches to the Petersons up here. But I've got matches to the Creers. So I know that segment is either through William or Sarah Jane. And I can continue trying to go back further on the tree with smaller matches, perhaps people who don't share as much with me, but who are further back and identify. So, of course, the real value of this is where I have a mystery match come in, and then that mystery match, say, would also share DNA right here with this group. And then I would know, okay, this is somebody on this career line coming down. So it just helps us identify, it helps us to understand our genetic makeup, and it is just a wonderful way and a wonderful tool. And now we have 23andMe's chromosome browser to help us find those triangulated segments. So just some steps, pretty simple. Choose your match. In this case, I chose my cousin that I knew, KS. I would recommend always painting your closest matches. That'll help you anchor your map so that you have a good foundation. You know who these people are, and then you can start looking for those other people that will overlap. So on 23andMe, you can look for the overlap and then compare the segment data between the three of you. And once you have got all of that, then you can go ahead and paint your segments on DNA Painter, and you've got another segment triangulated. So good luck with trying that out, and thank you very much.